Hi everyone, a literal 2-year-old here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Zeal Ardor album, Stranger Fruit. Zeal Ardor is a musical project masterminded by Switzerland native Manuel Gagnou, who started turning heads with this project in the spring of last year with his Bandcamp release Devil Is Fine, which caused a pretty big stir because of the album's unique blend of black metal and slave spirituals. And the mix of these two genres for Zeal Ardor is more than just aesthetic deep, as it's even a lyrical and a narrative combination too. Take an older track like Blood in the River, for example, which features some of the terminology surrounding religion and struggle that you typically find in spirituals, but there are also some very dark notes of lyricism and just outright blasphemy in the song too. Because of this mix of genres, Zeal Ardor is easily one of the most unique metal projects to crop up this decade. However, that Devil Is Fine record, as interesting as it was, I think it did leave a little to be desired in terms of execution. The recording was a little rough, and these two seemingly different genres weren't blended as seamlessly as they could have been. I was kind of hoping these issues would be resolved on Stranger Fruit, and on this album that pretty much happens. I would say Manuel works pretty effectively to deepen the ties between these two styles of music, especially with devilish stompers like Row Row, or the incredibly shocking, harrowing, and traumatic Don't You Dare, a track that seems to be about somebody undergoing some kind of mental or physical torture, and that person is under the threat of death if they are to look away from what somebody is forcing them to experience. Given the theme and the background of this project, the victim of this treatment could possibly be enslaved, I don't know, but there's also a vocal clip at some point in the track about human sacrifices. Most likely it's a column A, column B situation, because a lot of the time it just seems like these two worlds are being evenly blended to juxtapose images of God and the devil, beasts, a grim picture of the raw and actual savagery of man, but also some references to the otherworldly, the occult. I mean, I shouldn't be too surprised that a project like this exists in 2018. Black metal has undergone quite a bit of evolution over the past decade, with bands like Wolves in the Throne Room and Liturgy kind of opening up the experimental floodgates on the American wing of the genre. Not to mention that I think a band like Algiers isn't actually that far removed stylistically from what Zeal Ardor is doing. I mean, granted, they're not a metal band, but there is a similarly dark, atmospheric, and strange vibe to their music, with their combination of post-punk, goth, soul, blues, industrial. Of course, there are purists in the mostly traditionalist black metal scene who will never take to what Zeal Ardor is doing, but if you're somebody who's open to this change, open to this mix, I think this album has a lot to offer. It does have a bit of a slow start, though. I do like the atmospheric tone-setting intro, which is heavily layered with these explosive tremolo pick guitars, forlorn vocal harmonies. It sort of sounds like a black metal take on a spiritual dirge. But then the following track, Gravediggers Chants, sort of feels like what could have been more of a cool down moment in the middle of the record. It's not as seamlessly blended in terms of the two main styles of music featured on this record, nor is it as well structured as a lot of the other songs on here, as the finish kind of just fizzles out. I mean, the sound and the performance is great. The hollering vocals that Manuel works into the track are chilling to the bone. Lots of heavy and bombastic drums and pianos on this thing, some occasional shots of guitar feedback. Very big, powerful sounds that just trample my head like a stampede. Just not one of the better tunes on here, and a really odd pick for the first leg of the album. The song Servants is a sharper and more exciting blend of the two genres informing most of this record. You have these bellowing, howling, hollering again, expressive lead vocals, singing and delivering all of this familial terminology, but mixing that with symbolism of death and a red horse. And it seems like as we get deeper into the lyrics, singing about being servants and joining us, it's kind of almost as if this song is just about worshiping Satan over another explosive wall of black metal guitars. Eventually, these guitars mix with some very sweet, like ooh, 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 vocal harmonies that turn kind of sour and demented for an incredible finale. I know on the surface that the way I'm describing this, it might sound totally ridiculous, like these two genres together in the same record, it can't possibly work together, but I think Manuel does a fantastic job of exposing the inherent darkness and mournful tone of spiritual music that pairs well with black metal. So I think there was natural common ground there that a lot of people weren't really aware of prior, but clearly Manuel is putting in a lot of effort to get these two genres in the same room together. I mean, the way the black metal guitars work together with the lead vocals at the start of Don't You Dare is actually really surprising. You could call what Zeal Ardor is doing a gimmick, but really only in the sense that so few people are doing it and it just seems like such a novelty. But the actual result, the actual product delivered on this record is incredibly detailed, menacing, and pretty inspired too. I love the thrilling and blistering fire of motion, definitely a high intensity point on the album, which is matched really well with the ambient-ish interlude, The Hermit, one of a few transitional tracks in the track listing here, which build up the flow of the album quite a bit. Otherwise, it would be much more one-dimensional. These fusions of black metal and spirituals continue onto the song Row Row, where Manuel is still finding new and interesting and subtle ways to kind of bring these worlds together, which I attribute greatly to the performance and production aspects of this record. While sure, the vocals are clearly inspired by slave spirituals, there's also kind of an aggressive, gruff, roaring quality to them too that doesn't feel that far removed from a metal song. Meanwhile, the production, while it is heavy, it is hard-hitting, it's not too squeaky clean, it's not too sequenced, it's not too sanitary or touched up or anything like that. There is a bit of rawness to it that I think is natural and necessary for this style of music. I wouldn't call the guitar playing or the drumming all that flashy either. It's very good, it's very solid. I think the magic of a lot of these songs actually comes from the layering, the pacing, the overall composition of these tracks, the transitions that Manuel puts these songs through as they move from section to section, the way he changes up or progresses sections of songs that you might have heard already by adding different vocal harmonies or changing guitar parts or drum parts. It's all very well assembled. There's also the song Ship on Fire, which changes things up because there are a few points at which it incorporates these eerie Latin chants. As we get into the second half of the record, I will say the album does falter a tad. The song Waste, for the most part in the intro, has this very boring 2-chord progression and some vocal riffing that for whatever reason doesn't so much sound like it's inspired by the same spiritual music that a lot of the previous tracks were. Rather, the singing on this track just kind of comes off like that of like a bad alt metal or post-grunge song. I kind of got the same vibe from the singing on the track Built on Ashes, the closer of this album. We are like this close away from like a Scott Stapp impression, I swear. Still, the instrumental atmosphere on both of these tracks is pretty terrifying. There are some other experiments and variations in the second half of this record that do go over much better though. The song We Can't Be Found is the only cut that blatantly incorporates some thrash metal riffing into the Zeal Ardor equation, with more eerie vocal harmonies and more chilling chants. The song You Ain't Comin' Back is another attempt at a heavy, soulful ballad, turned out much better than Gravediggers Chant in my opinion. It really is a powerful moment on the album and an exceptional song about death, trauma, and letting go. Also, Manuel sings some shivering and sweet falsettos on this track too that are amazing. Meanwhile, the song The Fool is a surprising, serene synthscape in the midst of the album, because why not? It's a softer and more endearing moment on the record. It does provide a nice breather, and even though it is a very big aesthetic change, the compositional style of this song is very romantic, which always works against a black metal backdrop. We have another synth track not too much later on the song Solve, but it's much shorter, kind of seems redundant at this point. I feel like this breather we could have used earlier so it would have broken things up a bit more. Meanwhile, the song Stranger Fruit, the title track, takes things in almost an industrial direction with these heavy booming drums and piano notes. It feels almost Nine Inch Nails inspired, and if you are at all familiar with the origin of the song Strange Fruit, you can pretty much put 2 and 2 together as to what the horrors of this song are about. Now, as cool as the song Coagula sounds, it's still kind of a weird vocal chanty 1-minute detour that I don't think adds that much to the track listing. Like, I wish this musical bit was somehow incorporated into maybe a larger song or something. And I've already kind of stated my piece on the final track. I still don't really like the lead vocals of it, even though I do like the lyrical sentiment, the instrumental backdrop, and the whole dying alone refrain. Like, it is a very dark and a very final message to leave this album off with. So I will say two things overall that are a bit of a slight against this album. I still don't think all the kinks, all of the wrinkles have been kind of smoothed out on this new record. And as good and as varied and as thoroughly entertaining as this record is, I wonder if there's really another album in Zeal Ardor. I mean, there's always the chance that he can reinvent this sound once again, but he went pretty deep into the rabbit hole on this one, and I wonder how much deeper it goes. One more thing I'll say is that I wish the album had a stronger start and a stronger finish, but outside of all of that, this is an incredibly well-produced, well-written, creative, trailblazing album. What Manuel is doing on this record is so off the beaten path, I doubt that there will be many other artists who are kind of following in his footsteps on this record. But regardless, I'm still very happy that this incredibly unique music release happened, because it's great. It's an experience that I'll never regret, and it shows just how much potentially unexplored territory there is in the realm of music. I'm feeling a light to decent 8 on this record. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like, please subscribe, and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Zeal Ardor, forever.